Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in like 1 minute. Okay, so we are live on YouTube and here, and I'm going to ask all my panelists to turn on their cameras. We're about to get started. Okay. Perfect. Okay, cool. My internet has been playing games with me, so you guys are gonna have to bear with me. But so let's get started. Thank you guys so much for coming to our second pre-med Zoom party of the summer. Woo! Last week we did the personal statement, and today we're gonna be talking about the Mcat. And I have 4 beautiful, melanated, incoming med students who are going to be amazing doctors to come here and talk about their experience with the Mcat and talk about their experiences. And I think we have a nice mix here, people who were retakers, people who only took it once. So we're going to get started. I'm going to have everyone just introduce yourself, say your name, your undergrad institution, the year you graduated, number of gap years, and then you can just share a fun fact about yourself.
I can start us off. Can you hear me okay? Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Soma. I graduated from the University of Maryland in 2019 as a chemistry major. I'm about to finish my second gap year. I'm doing research currently at the NIH. And then a fun fact, I finished a t-shirt quilt that I've been working on for the past couple of years this quarantine. So excited about that.
Okay, I'll go. I'm Tia. Can you hear me? Cool. Yes. I graduated from Penn State in spring 2020. I'm in my just one gap year. I majored in biology and minored in Spanish. And fun fact about me, I don't like pie. I think it's nasty. Sorry. What?
Okay, I can go. Everybody hear me? Great. My name is Mario. I am graduated from the University of Notre Dame last year, 2020. So I took only one gap year, and I majored in psychology. I started off as biochem, did not work out. Switched to psych. And fun fact about me, I lived on 3 continents.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine. I graduated in 2020 from Northeastern University in Boston with a degree in health science. And I am currently in one gap year. And my fun fact is that I am about to complete my AmeriCorps year of service. So that's pretty awesome.
Well, thank you guys so much. So for our attendees, this is a webinar format, so you cannot turn on your camera, nor can you unmute yourself. However, we do have a Q&A, so as things come up, if you have questions, please submit it to the Q&A, and we will answer them at the end. And I have some pre-written questions that I'm going to ask my panelists, and that's just kind of how we're going to operate tonight. So my first question to everyone is, can you say your MCAT score and how many times you took it?
I took my MCAT twice. The first time I got a 499, and the second time I got a 510.
I took the Mcat once and I got a 517.
I've taken it 3 times, voided the first time, got a 496 the second time, and then got a 517 on my third take.
I took it once and I got a 510.
Thank you. My next question is, how long did you study for? And can you give percentage-wise how much time you spent on content review and how much time was spent on like pure practice or questions?
Okay, I can go first. So I started studying for it the year before I took it, October. It was around fall break, and I ended up taking. I had planned to take it in May at the end when after like finals and stuff was done, but because of COVID, like a bunch of dates were canceled, including the one that I planned to go on. So I ended up taking it in late July, and that was actually a blessing because I don't think I would have performed as well in May. In fact, I'm pretty sure I would not have. So I think content-wise, it's interesting. I always think it's a little misleading, like content review versus just practice, but the focus is practice at the end, but because you're always doing content review, kind of. But I'd say like just content review, I went from October till about January, and then started incorporating like questions and practice questions in February of 2020, and had to take a little break. But then from then on was like practice focused, and then using the practice to back up the content that I knew or go back to refresh based on which questions I was getting right or wrong. So yeah, that was like my whole procedure up until July 20th, I think, something like that.
I can go. Similar. I took it in, in the COVID where things got canceled. I had initially scheduled it for March, and then that got canceled, and I had it scheduled for like mid-June. So I had like 3 months from March to June to study for it. I did about a month of content review where I literally read through every single Kaplan book, and then I did practice questions, and then I would like review content that needed refreshing once I went over that content.
For me, I took 8 weeks to study. So I took the 8 weeks right after I graduated from college to study. I didn't do as much content review since I felt like since I just graduated, I had a lot of the material already fresh in my mind. So I'd say for me, maybe I probably spent like 30% content review versus 70% like doing more practice. And I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I'll stop there.
Oh, you want me to? I well, the first time I thought it was all about just like answering a bunch of questions, and so I tried to do that, but it didn't go so well. So the second time, I spent like a long time on content review. So I was also supposed to take it in April, then COVID canceled it, and I didn't end up taking it till like the end of June, which was also a blessing because I don't think I would have been ready either had I not had that pushback. But I tried to study during the school year, but it was really shaky. So I didn't really do like hardcore studying until like like mid-April to like beginning of May once I graduated. And then I was studying all then until June. And I spent a lot of time on content review in the beginning, like I spent like probably that whole like fake studying time from January to May doing content review. And then once I got out of school, I was doing like practice questions every day. And I focused, like, I see a question in the chat saying, what topics did you focus on? And I focused on the areas I knew were the weakest. Like, I suck at chemistry. So I spent I did like everyday chemistry questions. And I sucked at cars. So I did cars every day. But I majored in bio. So I knew I didn't need to like focus on that every day. So I think it's really person dependent. Just know like what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. And if you're like crunched for time, focus on your weaknesses more than your strengths. Don't completely forget about them, but know where to focus. That would be my advice.
Yeah, so a couple of things that came up that I want to hear more from you guys. So it sounds like some of you guys studied while in school or kind of studied while in school and others maybe not. So I'm kind of curious, how did you balance your school workload with studying for this thing that really is a very self-motivating process?
Tia, you can go.
I was just gonna say that I didn't. Like I had a really hard time balancing it. Like my advisor told me to like give myself a light semester in the spring, but there were all these school classes that I wanted to take, so I didn't. And then I was trying to study at the same time, and it was just like a mess. So that's why like after school ended was really when I could grind a lot. If you're good at balancing stuff, like she said, think of like the Mcat as like a 3-credit class. So if you're gonna be studying at that time, take like 12 credits, and then like the MCAT will be like your 15th credit. So you have time to study. Don't do what I did and take like a full course load your last semester. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, similar to what Tia said was, don't kid yourself that you can study while you're taking classes. That's like a mistake I feel like a lot of people do. Like the fake studying that you were doing, I also did that like in 2019 when I took it like the first and the second time. I was like fake studying, and then I took it and I was like, that didn't work out so well. So when COVID like made everyone go back home after like the school shut down and stuff like that, I was literally studying like 8 hours a day full time, just MCAT. That's it.
Yeah, I cannot reiterate that enough. Like I said, I started in October, and I can confidently say my October to like mid-January was like useless. Like I don't know why I was taking, like I could have been doing other things with people. Just kind of enjoying my last year. This was my senior year. And then kick into real gear. But you don't kid yourself that you can kind of do that. My fall semester, it was not light at all. My spring was supposed to be light, and that's when I was supposed to get into gear. And then also like know your limits. And like I'm sure people have probably heard this before, but honestly, only take it when you're ready, or when you feel like you're ready. Because I'm glad that mine kind of got canceled, because I had to take a 2-month like hiatus where I really wasn't doing anything because my home situation just wouldn't let me focus from like March to May. So like it really helped that I was doing very little during that time. So it helped that it got pushed to July. And if you have something like that, something comes up in life, because it's life, you can't really control all the factors. Something comes up, it's always better to postpone to, like it may even suck, like, oh, I'm right on the edge. If I have to postpone, like I may have to take another gap year, or just take a gap year if you want to go straight in. Like that's always better to make sure you're ready. You will always be able to find things to do during a gap year. Even during COVID, people still managed to do it, it was a little more difficult, but like definitely if you're going to study, like set out a time when you're going to study, and like there shouldn't be compromise. You should build everything else around that time, so that you actually know like what you're really studying, and it's not like a boneless study essentially. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. My next question is, because it sounds like, and this might be more geared towards my retakers, the MCAT changed. Like they were just like, LOL, it's going to be 5 or 6 hours. How did that change your studying? Or did that change your studying at all? And maybe for those who didn't even retake that, just did the 6-hour one, talking about that experience. But then those who maybe retook compared to the 8 versus 6, maybe talking about what that difference was like, or if that changed how you studied.
Yeah, it didn't change really how I studied, but I was so happy not to be sitting there for 8 hours because it's really draining. I would say by the end of the test, like the first time, I don't know if it's just because I didn't know stuff or like or I don't know how everybody else felt, but it was like, wow, that was a really long test. I used so much brain energy. The 6-hour one felt better, except for the car section because they still gave you 9 passages, which I thought was really dirty. But other than that, I like the 6-hour one better. It was like, I guess it was 6.5, however long it was. It felt better on my brain, but it also could because I actually was prepared that time. So it's a toss up.
Yeah, I'd say the shortened test was the best thing that could have ever happened to and all of us who took it in COVID. But you still have to take like the AMC practice tests, which are still 7.5 hours long. So I took those, and I also took like some of the test prep companies came out with like an abridged test that you could take that was shorter. So I took some of those. But if you're taking the 7-hour, then the 5-hour doesn't matter because you're already have that endurance.
Thank you. My next question, and I think this is a question a lot of people have, is what resources did you use and how much, if you're comfortable sharing, did you spend on prep? As you know, prepping for the Mcat can become costly, or it can be honestly free 99. So can you guys talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I can go. So for me, I used the AMC or double AMC resource of their pack. I forgot what it's called, like their complete pack, where it gives you all the practice questions, the flashcards, the practice exams. I think there are 5 practice exams, 4 are like scored officially and one's not, but it's the exact same, like, time, schedule, everything like that. Then I used Kaplan. I got their full online version because and their full not online, the pack they had where you got the books, and then it was cheaper to get the online stuff with the books rather than just getting online, and it's a little more expensive. And I think those are the only resources I really bought, because they were the 2 that I was advised, like, if you want to do well, these 2 you should have. Especially those Kaplan books. For me, they really came in handy. Like, all the content you learn in all the classes that you need for the MCAT, they're all contained in those books. And for me, I found it better than like the textbooks we used to learn that same content. They're more concise. And then, like, yeah, go through all the AMC material. That's like a must. And I think I spent, with both of those, I'm going to just average out and say both of those were a little, like, around $250 each, something like that. So I think I spent like $500 getting those, some around that. It won't be more than like 600. I know that much. So those are the resources I use. And then the Khan Academy videos was my third big one, for sure, to like bolster that content when you get tired of just reading, like absorbing it in a different way, which is very helpful, but that's free. So that was great.
I will definitely second the double AMC material. Since they're the people who write the exam, their resources are probably the best to use to practice. And then I also used Khan Academy, and that's how I kind of learned all the things that I didn't know and that I didn't learn in school. I did hear Khan Academy is ending their like Mcat double AMC connection. So I have also heard that AK Lectures is a really good like video resource if you prefer to learn by watching videos. I also had a bunch of like Anki note cards that I'd made throughout college that I kind of just transferred over to my Mcat like note card decks online. And then the last 2 resources I used some exam crackers books, which I borrowed from the library actually. So that's another good resource if you don't want to buy some, see if your library has any. And then I also received an email from someone I knew from school that had a bunch of Mcat resources. So I'm always happy to share that with anybody if you reach out to me, or I will definitely share that with anybody who asks me for it, because I found that super helpful to have everything in one place. Oh, and then the double AMC thing is the only thing I bought, so that was like $275 or so.
Yeah, with the AMC things, like you should buy them if you don't qualify for the fee waiver. That's how I got mine. Like if you qualify for fee waiver, use the fee assistance program to get access to all of the AMC. Like it'll give you everything that you need, including the practice test and other supplemental questions to use. I used UWorld to make like mini practice tests to do if I was doing content review from the Kaplan books. And then I was like, okay, I need to work on my amino acids. I could do like 20 questions from UWorld on amino acids only. So that was really helpful. And I don't know how much UWorld costs for like.
Yeah. Honestly, to reiterate, do not sleep on that fee assistance program. I did. I ended up qualifying for it later, which saved me a whole lot because it's not just Mcat and studying, it's also your applications. You get, I guess, quick plug for them, but for you as well, 20 applications, I believe it's 20 free applications, both primaries and secondaries. Almost all of them are also free with the fee assistance program, and that could save you upwards of like $2K. So if you do qualify for those, I mean, even if you don't, just apply, because the worst thing they can do is say no, and you're not any worse off than you were. So I recommend.
Thank you. So my next question is, studying for the MCAT is not fun, obviously, because if it was, then I guess everyone would do it. I know I personally had days where I was just like, honestly, F this, like, I don't gotta take the MCAT, I could do something else. I'm curious, can you describe your worst MCAT study day, or a day where you really just felt very defeated, and how you overcame that day? And I think it's really important to talk about this because studying for the MCAT is hard, and I know I cried a whole bunch of days. But I think it's just kind of comforting to hear that other people struggle too, and we all have bad study days.
Well, mine was my worst day was a couple of days before I went to take my first test. I took a practice exam from the AMC and I like got it below 500. And I was like super devastated because I was about to take the test and I cried. I just sat in the whole day and I cried. And I was like, well, you already paid for it. So you're gonna have to go in there and take it. And I knew my score wasn't gonna be great when I went in there, but I was like, just take it as a little practice. You know, you never know what might happen. And it came back and it wasn't great like I thought. But again, I sat there and cried. And you know, you just have to remember what you're doing this for, what's motivating you to do this. There's going to be a lot of hard times in medical school. Haven't even started yet, and I've already, you know, had some trials and tribulations. But stay focused on the goal, I would say. And not every day is going to be easy. I mean, just like when you go to the gym, you have a bad gym workout, you're not going to stop going to the gym forever just because like you had a bad workout, you know? Just keep pushing, I would say. And if it's not your best score, just try to come in the next day and don't let that weigh on you. Like the next time you go to practice or the next time you're studying that you did bad, just go in there with a fresh mind. And that's what I would say.
I think my worst day was when I got my score back from my like second test that I actually had scored, and that was like soul crushing because I was like, oh, I really want to go to medical school, and I was like, is that gonna happen? Not with that score. So that was really crushing, and I kind of questioned my whole like path. I was like, is this really what I'm gonna do? So then going into studying, when I was like tracking all my progress with my scores, and then similar to Tia, I took like a Kaplan free test at the end. I had been taking all the AMC ones and scoring well, and then I took like a Kaplan one and I got like way below what I was scoring, and I was just like, wow. so that's how it's gonna be. And then I was like, well, that's all I got, right? You just do your best in your studying, and then you got to go and take the actual test. So you really got to like take it with a grain of salt, but also be realistic with yourself. And in terms of staying um, motivated, but like not distracted. So you have to find something that you like to do while you're studying, like not while you're studying, but like when you take a break from studying. So whether that's baking or something else you can do in like an hour when you're taking a break, that's really useful. But I would watch TV shows that were that I had already seen before that I liked, so that I wouldn't feel like, oh, I have to like keep watching the next episode. So I was like, all right, I've already seen all of the Grey's Anatomy, so if I watch it again, it doesn't matter. I know what's gonna happen. Like Jimmy dies. All right.
And you just shattered the seasons for all those who haven't watched it yet.
I go. So for me, I remember there was just one bad day where I felt like I just like wasn't answering questions right, and I was getting a lot of things wrong. And towards the end of the day, I just felt like I was falling behind and that I didn't know as much as I needed to. And because I had such like a short span of time to take the test, I didn't really have much time to like push the test back because I really wanted to take it when I did. Um, so I was like really worried during that day. So I tried to kind of like calm myself down towards the end of the day. And I ended up calling a friend later that day to tell her how I was feeling. And I don't really remember exactly what she said to me, but I'm sure she said something like, Soma, you're smart, you can do this, like you've worked so hard. And that made me feel a lot better. And I will definitely second what Catherine said about kind of making sure you engage in those like self-care practices and make sure you have sort of those like de-stressing practices that you do, because that's really important, not just for taking the Mcat, but for life in general and moving on into like medical school and residency and everything. So definitely find those practices for yourself and have a great support network as well. So people who are going to lift you up even when you feel really bad.
Yeah, so my worst day was, it was also score related, on the practices, not the actual exam. Honestly, that exam was just a hoe. Like in general, like it just did not, it is terrible, terrible. Like I can't stress that enough. And you, to each their own, but I don't think it proves or says anything about who you are and if you can be a good doctor or a good physician whatsoever. But my worst day was, actually I'll start a couple of days before. I realized that I was getting like around like a 507 in my practice, my last practice. And I was like, okay, I had a few weeks left to take the actual exam. So I was like, I'm on pace. My target was about 511. So I fell a little bit short, but not too much where it was like I was gonna retake it. But I looked and I was like, you know what? These scores, the things I'm getting, questions I'm getting the most wrong on are like biochem questions. So for the next few days, like I went crazy on those questions. Like I always, every day I had a bit of cars in there, but apart from that, like I didn't focus on like physics or psych or so anything like that. It was just biochem. So I went crazy on it, and thought I was making progress. Took the full length exam, and when I tell you the lowest, it was like 504. So I had retracted on the actual exam. I had gone backwards, and my biochem section was head and shoulders lower than the rest of the sections. And I was so pissed that day. Like I knew I'd take it out on people. So I didn't talk to nobody. I stayed in my room. It was just like a awful day. And once in a while you'll get a test that does that. Don't let it discourage you. Cause I mean, if you want to do this for life, you're going to hit obstacles, and MCAT is just one, like it's just the first one to even get in. There are going to be obstacles throughout the whole course of being a physician, even when you've completed every kind of training there is. But the way I looked at it, I was like, you know what? I've done what I can on this section for now. I'm still going to throw it in there and balance it how I was, but I think I have a better chance raising my other sections than I do of getting biochem to even hit where they are right now. And kind of moved on with that strategy, and it helped a little bit. So I got close to my score. In essence, I was like, you're too much of the whole exam's a whole, but that section is too much of a whole for me to put that much energy into it. And spread out the energy to the other three more, like equally, I guess. And it worked out for me. So
Thank you, Mario. And that's a great segue into my next question of how did you guys review your practice exams? So after you took the practice exams, you got the scores back. What is your process of how you go through the exam and say, okay, this is what I need to work on, or this is the content? Like, what was that process? What did that process look like for you?
I took a lot of Kaplan practice exams before I took the AAMC ones, and I don't exactly remember the layout of the AAMC, but I know in the Kaplan it told you, which questions you got right and wrong, obviously, but then it told you like what section it fell under. So it was like if it was chemistry, it'd be like molecules, or I mean, there's a lot of molecules in chemistry, but you know what I'm saying. Or if it was biochem, it'd be like this section was about amino acids. So I would take note of what questions I was getting wrong and like what section it was falling under. So if I knew I was getting a lot of questions about amino acids wrong, that week I would be like, well, this week I'm going to make sure I double down on my amino acids so I'm not missing those same questions anymore. And well, cars was crap all the time. So it was just about practicing that every day, like practice cars every single day that you're studying. For the rest of my sections though, I would go through and make sure I knew what all, like I would read every single question and make sure I knew what every answer choice meant. Even if I got the question right, if I still didn't know what an answer choice was, I would take note of it and then write it back in my notes so I can review it later. That was really helpful, especially with the psych soc section when it's like pure memorization. And they have a lot of words that sound really similar. So that was helpful for that. And also with the Chem Phys, there would be like random equations they would throw in out of nowhere. So I would take note of any equation that I didn't already have. I had a list of like flashcards with all the Chem Phys equations, and I would put a new equation in there. And that was pretty much it.
Yeah, same for me, really similar to Tia. So I had a spreadsheet where I had the question answer, whether I got it right or wrong. So if I got it right, then I would kind of write any thoughts or comments for my reasoning. And then if I got it wrong, I would kind of write out what I was thinking when I answered the question, what the correct answer was, and kind of figure out, like, reason my way to that correct answer and make sure I understood like where I was wrong in kind of answering that question. And then I also kept a note of like what the topic was, so I could come back to it later, or like have a list of those topics and make sure that as I was going through my content review, then I was making sure that I could address those topics. And then later towards the end, I kind of went back through those spreadsheets to make sure I like knew all the topics that I had bolded that I really wanted to make sure that I knew as well. And yeah.
For me, I really wanted to stress the importance of like actively learning something. And so like you use your computer so much, and I know like Soma, like the Excel sheet like worked for you, but for me and I think some other people, like actually writing things out is really helpful for people, and it kind of like forces you to like do the learning yourself study or not just like typing things out repetitively. So writing things out, like Tia said, I had an equation sheet after all of the things that I had done. There are a lot of physics equations, all of the physics things, all of the like electrical circuit, everything. You should have it memorized. So what I did was was practicing regurgitating all of the equations. So I would take a blank sheet of paper, write out all of the equations that I had, and then I would do it again and do it again. That way, when I got my flip book at the test, I could just put it all exactly the same way that I practiced, and I would have all the equations there that I needed at the start of the test. In terms of practice test review, you have to review every single question that you do, not just the ones that you get wrong. It's really important that you solidify the information that you are confident about, but usually sometimes you get questions right that you really didn't know how you got the right answer, and you have to go back and do it all over and see like what you did right, what you did wrong, why did I get this question wrong? And then another thing I did was I retook some of the practice tests that I had already taken before. So if I'd already taken practice test 4 or like practice test 1 earlier on, later I redid practice test 1. And if you're actually learning, you should score better on that test, even though it's like repetitive information, because you'd be surprised, you might get the same score if you're actually not learning from your tests.
Okay, thank you. So we have about 45 questions submitted. So I'm going to end my questions here and go through these questions, and we're going to spend the rest of the time going through the questions. You don't all have to answer. If like 1 or 2 people answer it, that would be okay. So the first question is, and I think we kind of already touched upon this, but the first question was, what is your advice in how you should start your studying? Should you start with the books or should you start with practice? Why or why not?
Take a practice test, take a free one from like Blueprint or something, take anyone's free one just to like see where you are. If you take it first out of the bat and you get like a 520, like then what are you doing? You're probably like some genius, but just take the test just to see how the test is, and then you can go into content review.
I agree with taking a test at the beginning. Another thing I would suggest is to familiarize yourself with like the structure of the exam. So the double AMC has a lot of detailed information about the exam, what's on it. They like break everything down into foundational concepts and they list everything under that concept. So it's really important to know exactly how the exam is structured and what's on it, so it doesn't feel as overwhelming if you know like exactly what you're going into. And that way you could kind of like organize your studying from there. If you already know some topics and you don't know others, then you can figure out what will work for you.
Thank you. The next question is, how do you manage test anxiety? Okay, I'll answer this one because I have test taking anxiety, and I like lose my wig cap every time I have to take a standardized test or an exam. For me personally, I think the first thing is being in therapy or getting some kind of professional help. I think is the first and foremost thing. It's really important to take care of your mental health and also work with a professional to work on the skill set you need to manage that test taking anxiety. With that being said, the Mcat, like other standardized tests as well as institutions, there are such things called accommodations, where if you need extended time for your exam or if you need to take more breaks than your average person on an exam, or if you need any kind of special accommodations, you can apply for those through the Mcat. It's a long process, and it's important to, if you know you need accommodations, you need to apply for them way in advance of your exam. So I would probably say like 4 to 5 months in advance of your exam, because it takes them 60 days to review your initial request. And if after reviewing your initial request, they require more information, or if they require more information, you have to then resubmit, and you don't get put back at the top of the queue. It takes another 30 days for them to look at it again, right? So your review process could easily become 3 to 4 months to get an approval. And even at that, it may not be a full approval, depending on the documentation you have and whether you meet the requirements for what constitutes getting an accommodation. So that's what I'll say with testing anxiety. Outside of that, I think if you're going into medicine, you have to get comfortable with the idea of taking standardized tests. There's absolutely no way around it. You're going to take the Mcat, you're going to take step 1, you're going to take step 2, you're going to take step 3, and then you're going to take your boards every 10 years. So it doesn't end with the Mcat. So I do think it's really important to make sure you find a way to manage that stress. And I think working with therapy, working with a professional, will be the best route for that. We're working with academic directors as well. The next question is, how do you break the 500 score barrier for those who initially had a score below 500? What are some factors that led to the increased score jump?
I think I mentioned this before, but I definitely didn't know the content enough as much as I thought I did. when I took it. And so when I was doing practice questions, it was really difficult for me because I didn't know what the questions were talking about and I was still trying to answer them. So I think the biggest difference for me was to take a little bit of time to like do content review, but I never stopped kind of doing content review because I like read all the books and then I took my notes. And then every time I like did practice questions, I would, oh shit, I'm sorry, my sister called me. I would do practice questions, and then what I learned from the practice questions, I would put, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I would put them back in my notes, and I'm so sorry. It must be emergency. I'll have to go.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take over for Tia. Tia and I both retook it. So I would say one is you have to be realistic with where you are at with your studying. Like if you're been studying for 6 months and you keep getting like a 496, like you're not going to get a 510. You're just not. It's impossible. You're not going to get a 510. So like for me, I was like, okay, I got to track my progress to see how I'm improving and am I actually getting better. So if I took practice tests, I'm reviewing every single question in it. And then I'm doing more practice questions throughout the week so that if I'm doing a month of practice tests on the weekend or something, that way, by the time I take my next test, if my score is not higher, something's wrong with my study method, right? Because the tests are standardized. So you should be getting either the same or higher if you're doing better. So you need to track your progress, redo problems, write things out, draw things out, whatever works for you. If you're visual, if you're like tactile, whatever, you need a thing to like do, because passing 500, I wouldn't say is like really challenging if you're actually doing the work to overcome that.
Thank you. I think this is a question I have for Catherine. You voided your first score. What was going on in your head during the test and exam, and how did you come to the decision to void a score?
Okay, so like this was my junior year and I was like preparing for the cycle junior year because I was initially intending to not take a gap year. So I was like, oh, I have to schedule my MCAT. And I was like in a frenzy to schedule it and there was no openings in my states. Then I went to Pennsylvania to take it. And then when I got there, I was like, I had a little self-reflection moment and I was like, am I actually gonna do well on this test? And I was like, no. So I made the decision before I took the test to void it. But I was like, I'm going to take it anyways, just so that I can like see what the whole testing environment is like, what, you know, the palm scanner, like what's the brakes like. And I think that was a good opportunity for me to see what it's like to actually take this 7-hour test, like in the actual testing conditions. So that's what I used that voided test for. And then like a dum-dum, I decided to take it like 2 months later, thinking that I had actually done some actual studying. And that's when I got the 496. So that's kind of the thought process behind the void.
Thank you.
Wait, I have a question. Do you figure out your score when you get it voided? Do they tell you like what your score would
You don't
be?
get a score. You don't get a score.
Oh.
And it counts towards your 7 maximum testing attempts. So if you void it, it counts.
The next question is, how many practice tests did you each ultimately use in your entire studying?
I think I used 9. Talking to a couple of people who were taking the test and, friends of mine ahead of me, the thing that they always said, like, people who do well on the exam take more practice exams. They know the structure better. They've seen more of the actual exam questions, especially the AAMC questions, right? I think they give you 5 practice exams. Some don't quote me on that, but I'm like pretty sure that's what it is. And I think I got 2 or 3 from Kaplan. And then I got one from Princeton and one from, I think they've changed their name now, but it used to be like is it Next Step now? what did you
Blueprint
say
now.
called? Blueprint, right? So I got one from each of those. I don't think I ended up using the Princeton one except just to do questions. Like I just did it as questions rather than as the exam. But I think I ended up taking 9 of those, and then the way I did it was I had one exam that wasn't AAMC at the beginning. I think it was a Kaplan one to kind of gauge myself, then did my content review, then did one after content review, and then had like the rest left. And while I was doing questions at the beginning, I took like 1, then a few weeks, then 2. But then at the end, the last like 7 weeks of my studying was like either 5 or 6 practice exams. And I just did it like on a weekly basis, one day to take the exam, nothing else on that day, just so like I can rest a little bit. So don't study on the same day you take a full length. It's not worth it. You won't get anything done. The next day, I spent the whole next day reviewing the exam. If you're reviewing properly, the review should actually take longer than the exam itself because you're trying to understand those concepts, especially the ones you got wrong. But most definitely review everything. And then like once I did those 2, I'd spend the next like 5 days before my next exam date just going through especially the things I had taken notes on, like I was weak on, going through practice problems on those, watching videos on those, so that like refreshing the content on those and seeing how it was applied in different questions. And then I take the exam again. Don't take an exam right before your actual exam. That like give yourself like, I'd say around a week before you take the real one.
I took like 10 in total, but some were redos of ones that I had done before.
I think I did like 8.
I think I did 4 AAMC ones, 1 next step. And then when I was looking online for some ways people studied, since I used the AAMC material, some people like made full lengths out of like the question banks and stuff like that. So I made like 2 or 3 full lengths kind of modified in that way.
Thank you. The next question is, there's obviously different companies and resources to use. How did you guys deal with resource overload, or how did you ultimately decide on the companies you were going to use for practice apart from AMC, which everyone should be using?
So the program I was at school, they gave us some materials and they were all Kaplan. I thought about buying some other ones, but I heard that Kaplan was pretty like standard. So I just kept using it. It wasn't really much of a choice for me. So I guess I wasn't the best to answer this question, but yeah, I think Kaplan was good for content, not for like the structure of the exam, because their questions are like harder. Like I found if you did, they had this one thing in Kaplan, it was like a Q bank that I was doing for a while, and that helped me a lot with content. Their questions were a lot harder than the AMC, which I think helped me when I switched over to taking the AMC material. But yeah, I used Kaplan.
Thank you. The next question is, and I don't even know if I asked you this or if you guys really went in detail about this, but there's a couple questions about what did your study schedule look like? Was it like hour by hour? Was it like, I'm just going to accomplish these things today? Can each of you talk about how you made your study schedule, if you got any help with your study schedule, and kind of what a normal study day looked like for you?
I think first you have to decide what the block of time is that you're studying for. That's number one. So get a calendar, see how many days you have. Then you're like, okay, this is test day. Work backwards from test day. How much time do you have to dedicate to content, and how much time do you have to do practice tests, which should be like towards the like latter half of your studying. And then with all of the question banks that you have, I broke down. So if you have all of the AAMC resources, they have all their question banks. I broke them down on Excel so that like they were in like 30 question chunks. And then I was like, okay, I'm doing these on these days, these on those days, and you can put them into the calendar so that you can see what I'm going to be doing for that day. And then at the start of every day, or at the close of every day, I'd write on a Post-it like what I'm going to be doing for the next day. just to keep myself, aware of what I'm trying to accomplish for the following day.
I made like every week kind of the same when it came to do practice questions. So like 2 days a week, I was doing bio and biochem questions, and then cars was every single day. So I was studying 6 days a week for about like 5 hours. So I'd spend like the first hour just doing cars questions and understanding what I got wrong there. And then I would go into like my specific questions for a subject. So one day would be bio and biochem, another day would be chem phys, and then another day would be psych soc. They only got one day. I'm pretty sure that evens out. I probably did chem and phys an extra day because I sucked at it. And then I would just do practice questions, and I would spend the rest of the time figuring out what I got wrong with those practice questions, knowing every question such that, adding it to my notes. And then like I would spend the last hour just reviewing new stuff that I put in my notes, or maybe doing flashcards about that section. And then each day was section based, pretty much.
I also had like an online Excel spreadsheet, similar to Catherine. I kind of had my exam date and was kind of organizing things around that. Mine was more broken down like day by day. So I knew, especially in the beginning, I needed to do the content review for what I didn't already know. I wanted to move my Anki note cards from my school decks to like my Mcat decks and modify those accordingly. And then I did a little bit of kind of reviewing note cards that I already had. So I kind of spaced that out over the first couple weeks. And then after that, I kind of organized how I would take my full lengths every week when I would review them, what extra practice questions I was going to do when I would review those. And then I also sprinkled in like reviewing my note cards every day as well. And I kind of took it day by day. So I knew that if I didn't finish everything that I wanted to do on one day, then I'd kind of have to arrange my schedule for the rest of the week. And then eventually I kind of figured out how, like what I could realistically do in a day so that I could organize my day that way. And then I didn't feel like I was like constantly falling behind.
So yeah, mine was a little different, but for my content review phase, I didn't really I knew I was going to use the Kaplan books. I've been advised to use the Kaplan books, so I didn't really set out like exactly what I wanted to accomplish. In my head, I was just like, go through every book, but each day I do a chapter in a book. That didn't work out. Like I said, the studying while actually taking classes, that did not pan out well. So I find myself skimming. I find myself like being in the moment and realizing, damn, I've really been on this page for an hour and a half. Like that did not, it wasn't the best. But once I actually got out of that phase, and I was like, you know what, you need to kind of get your shit together and start. I did really do like a chapter every day. And it wasn't so much to get every little detail. You may hear that like you need to get every detail of the content. That's not true. They want to test your concepts. Don't like, because I tried to highlight the pages, like, like, okay, this part's important. And I looked at the last page and there were like 3 unhighlighted words and it was like if, but, and I was like, this is pointless. There's too much like important info. So like get the concept that they're talking about. Did that. Once I got the main concept, I go back to the beginning of the chapter and then get like the breakoffs, the 2 or 3 main breakoffs from that main point. And then that's how I did it. For content. Then I switched to my actual question part, and that was more organized. I found it mundane at first to be doing just one kind of section a day. So I actually made it 2, and when I started this, it was June. And I spent my exam was end of July, and I spent about 8 hours a day. I decided not to work. Decided I'd get my gap year together after the exam to finish that kind of, you know yourself essentially. Like, and I knew like if I start working, it'll be just like I was in school. Like I won't be able to get stuff done. So I spent about 8 hours a day for 6 days a week, did not do anything on Sundays. And for the first 4 hours, it was a mix of like, I would spend 45 minutes doing practice questions on one section, take like a 5-10 minute break, then spend the next 45 minutes, 50 minutes reviewing those questions and taking notes. And I repeat that like twice essentially, then take a little break, then repeat that for a completely different section. And that got me to about 6.5, 7 hours. And then for like the last hour, I would just do like 30 minutes of cars questions. I think someone asked earlier in the Q&A, like how to get your car score up. I can't stress this enough. Just reading will help you. Like find like textbooks on like history or anything like arts and letters kind of based in essence, not as much science. Learn how to read quickly because those passages are long. Like, I don't know about you guys, but the 2020 passages, they were not the same size as the practice. They were longer for me. But I had spent enough time like reading that I could get the information fast enough. So that's what I did for like the questions. And then once it got to the exam set portion of how I studied, I just picked a day every week that I would take an exam, and then the exam that day, review next day, a mix of content and questions for the rest of the week, then repeat. And that's kind of how I broke up my studying.
Thank you. There was a question that asked, the Mcat is yes, knowing the content, but then also strategy. The question they asked is, what is the strategy portion of doing well on the Mcat?
There is none. It does not exist. It's going to be different for every person, but I'll let someone else like answer if they had a specific strategy.
Wait, could you repeat the question? Like, what was the strategy of taking the test?
So the question basically said that the Mcat is part, of course, it's knowing the content, but they hear it's also part strategy, and they're asking, what is that strategy part of the equation outside of knowing the content or knowing the information?
Oh, I think sometimes like the AAMC is a little funny about how they word questions, and you think you're searching for one answer when in reality it's a completely different answer. And then you go to read their explanation and you're like, what? Had I known you were looking for that, I would have chose that. So I think that comes with practice and doing like a bunch of their practice questions kind of gets you in the mindset of, oh, like I know that this is actually what they want, not what's making sense. It's their way. With cars, I feel like there is a strategy, but I never mastered it. A lot of people said you can like highlight things while you're reading. Some people do that. I had someone who told me after each paragraph, like write like a couple words down after each paragraph saying what you took from that paragraph. So then when you're going to answer the questions, you know which paragraph to look at. You got to look at a bunch of different strategies that work for you. Like, I think like what Mario was saying, everything works differently for everybody. The test sucks in general, but they have like a method to their madness, I guess. You just have to figure out what it is.
Oh, I was gonna add the I guess when you're doing your content review and practice, that's definitely helpful. And then I don't know, I don't want to say there's like little shortcuts to the MCAT, but if you can know like good acronyms to help you remember like different, what is it, like biological like tests or things like that, or anything that will help you remember, like memorizing your amino acids is really important so that you can know them on the spot and not have to think about them. So knowing those little like shortcuts or acronyms that will help you remember things really quickly so you don't have to spend time thinking about it. I think that's definitely helpful for like getting through certain questions really quickly. That way you can spend more time on questions that you might think are a little bit harder. And then I guess as much as you can, like mimic the testing environment. Well, I took mine before the pandemic, so I practiced waking up at like 6 a.m. for like the 2 weeks before the exam. So I knew how it was going to feel, what it was going to be like, and kind of just mimicking that as closely as you can as well.
Thank you. So we are coming to the close of our event. So before everyone goes, I want you guys to share. We've spent this entire hour talking about the Mcat, and I know there's a lot more to you guys as applicants than just the Mcat. So I want you guys to share your top two advice, your top two advice, yes, advices, your top two advice for applying and what makes a successful applicant.
I'll go first. I don't know how far along a lot of you are in your journey, but one advice I always tell people is like do an activity that you actually like. Like don't do something just to get into med school. Like people can see right through that. Like, I mean, yes, do the basic things, volunteering, X, Y, and Z, but like volunteer at a place like you're super interested in, or, you know, I was part of this like natural hair club. That was super fun. I was part of like an MLK committee. That was super fun too. Like do things like actually fulfill you. And then when you're writing your essays and you're talking about your applications and you have your interviews, they see that through you. Like they see your excitement and other things and how that makes you a more like whole and fulfilled person and ultimately a better doctor. So that's like my number one thing. My number two thing is school is important for sure, but there's more to life than being in school. You can study all the time, but it's not going to give you that same joy. And there's more to life, as Sam was saying, than being a doctor. You know, have things outside of studying. Don't be a gunner. They're super annoying. Like we all want to succeed, but you're doing too much. You know, don't be that person.
I think I definitely second what Tia said about doing things you enjoy, because it just makes like you'll enjoy yourself more. You can talk about your activities more, and you'll just be kind of like happier going through the application process. And I would definitely say give yourself enough time to make sure you're competitive and like a good applicant, because applying is expensive and reapplying is more expensive. So you really want to make sure that you're in a good place. So definitely give yourself enough time to like write your essays and everything, to study for your MCAT so that you can feel good about going into the application cycle. And then I also want to second what I was saying earlier about like self-care and developing all those de-stressing techniques, because even with applying at COVID, like the application cycle is so long, like it's really draining. It's kind of stressful. So definitely making sure that you're doing things that you enjoy, taking care of your mental health and everything like that. That's really important as well.
So I agree with the most definitely do something you like, because, you know, believe it or not, people can tell just by reading what you write, like if you're into something. Like that's not like, you know, you think you can only tell via speaking, but that's not true at all. Like they can see your passion, your commitment, through just reading what you write. That's through your personal statement, but also like the 15 activities. But I'd also say if you're someone, you know, there are people I know, friends of mine who are people who are really into just one thing. Step out of your comfort zone for these activities. You want them to be varied. You don't want to be the person that's applying and you have 14 activities and 13 of them are medicine related. Like that's not good. It may seem like that's what they want. It's not. They want to see that your life has some balance. So if it's just shadowing, then worked at this clinic, then worked at this hospital, then and there's no like, you know, Tia says she's like an MLK club or you know, like something that you love that is not medicine related, some other group or groups. Try and vary those activities to a certain extent. Maybe have three or four different types of things when you apply. And then the other thing is kind of vague, but the best way I can say it is put a little bit of yourself into everything you write. So like it's hard, but you have to think that these people who are reading your applications, you may get, you know, a school with 200 spots has 10,000 applications. Like they're reading a lot of the same things over and over again. You want to have something about how you write, maybe not something you write specifically, but about how you write that makes you stand out. Stand out in a good way. Don't put like I killed someone. You'll stand out, but you won't get in. But like, you know, like stand out in an actually like positive way. So that's something I'd say, especially in your personal statement. They give you 5,300 words or something like that or characters to put your whole background. Some of you have wanted to be physicians since you were like 3, and they want you to put all that on that page. Like, take some time to do that. Don't do it just the spur of the moment. Revise it, like go over it again, ask people to proofread, ask people what they think about it that you trust. So that when you're done with those paragraphs, the activities, when you're done with your personal statement, you know, like, this is me, this is authentic, because they'll get that. And when they're reviewing, there can be someone who's like, oh, this was the person who, and they remember you because of something. Rather than just like, everyone's going to have, some kind of research or shadowing or activities like that, but make sure they remember you for something outside as well.
Yeah, and lastly, I think there were some questions from like freshmen in the chat, so we've got like quite a wide range of attendees at this. So I'd say for those of you that are earlier on in your journey, especially like the freshmen, do school and do it hard. Like, do school, do it well. I'd say for me, it would be, don't let your stats be a hindrance to you when you are in control of them, right? So if you can study harder, get a tutor if you're struggling with physics or chemistry, do the work up front, because later down the road, you're gonna wish you had, when you can no longer change the outcome. So set yourself up right. In addition to clubs, you can join a new club, but you can't change your GPA. So that's 100%. For the people that are later in their journey that are about to apply, I would say, if you've done all the things, you're ready to apply, don't be afraid to click submit. Like, you've done the work, there's no going back. I struggle with pressing that submit button for like the primary. I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. So just do it. Like, don't be afraid, do it.
Yes, thank you so much. And you guys have probably heard me say this before, and I'm probably going to say it again in the later session, but a low GPA is always more expensive in the long run. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they are lying to you. Because when you have a low GPA, you either end up having to do a post-bac or a master's, which is more money that you maybe didn't have to spend. You end up having to apply to more schools because you have to widen your network. And you just spend more money. So listen to Catherine. If you're a freshman, sophomore, really, really focus on school. School is important. With that being said, our panelists have their Instagram names in their name, but if you guys can just type in your contact information and make sure you type it into panelists and attendees in the chat. And while you guys do that, I just want to give a big thank you, and I want Adora to come on and introduce herself. She's one of the people on the Premed Zoom party team who's been helping me put these events together. So she's going to introduce herself, and I just want everyone to give a huge thank you to her, as well as our panelists as well.
Sorry, I look a hot mess. I've been cooking, but I know some of you probably saw me like answering your questions. You're like, who's this weirdo? But hi, I'm Adora. I'm also an incoming med student. So hi, everyone in our class. I don't know what y'all want from me.
Where you graduated from, year?
I graduated in 2018 from St. Mary's College of California with my bachelor's in biology. I went on to do my master's in public health at St. Louis University, and that's where I am right now. So I'm a very non-trad. I'm also an international student. So when those panels happen, y'all will see me again. So this is not the only panel you're gonna see me on. I guess I'll also put my Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel. Shayon actually inspired me to start a YouTube channel. So I'm gonna put all of that there. So if you want to see me again, but you keep seeing me in the other pre-med Zoom party.
Exactly. So give everyone a huge thank you to our panelists, Catherine, Tia, Soma, Mario. Thank you guys so much for spending an hour with us and sharing your experiences. You are helping in the after you as we climb. Thank you guys so much. This was streaming onto YouTube, and probably in a day or two, if you came in late or missed the session, it's probably going to be on YouTube later for you guys to check out. Actually, this Friday, is our next session called Navigating the Application Cycle in a Global Pandemic. And we'll be hearing from students talk about their experiences applying virtually and not being able to see schools and stuff. So I hope you guys check that out. Be sure to register on the Eventbrite. And the Zoom ID and links will always go out through the Eventbrite. You get an email the day before the event. Thank you guys so much for coming, and I hope to see you guys at the next Zoom party.